Yo, what's going on, everybody? You are watching Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman. And coming up on today's show, we got a super fun one where I have 5 trade ideas for the Minnesota Vikings. Some of these are pretty ludicrous, so I'm sure you guys will have a lot of thoughts on these trades that I cooked up today. And we're going to start off with an absolute heater, a banger, a blockbuster trade idea, and we're going to call this one the Joe Burrow trade. So obviously it would take an absolute haul for the Vikings to somehow land Joe Burrow in a deal, and obviously this doesn't start unless Joe Burrow does request a trade out of Cincinnati. But the asking price is honestly impossible to determine because Joe Burrow, franchise quarterbacks, top 5 quarterbacks in the league in the prime of their careers, the asking price is going to be through the roof. So the Vikings will give them a Godfather offer. It would be 3 first-round picks in 26, 27, and 28, the most amount of picks the Vikings can offer. You attach on a second-round pick, and then you will throw in Jonathan Greenard. Now, you could obviously keep Jonathan Greenard in this deal and just load up on even more draft capital to Cincinnati. They wouldn't really have too much interest in a guy like Jordan Addison. So I think if there is ever a possibility of Joe Burrow being dealt to Minnesota, I think the trade would somewhat look like this: is a second, 3 firsts, Jonathan Greenard. And a lot of you guys might be saying, Patrick, that's absolutely insane. Why would you ever give up that much draft capital and Jonathan Greenard for a guy like Joe Burrow? My response would be, do whatever it takes to get Joe Burrow. Because I do think if the foundation and just the organization the Vikings have, if they just eventually get that franchise quarterback, they'll end up being a Super Bowl contender. And we have seen also in NFL history, they reward you with being super aggressive. Like the Rams when they won that Super Bowl. They gave up 2 firsts for Jalen Ramsey. They were ultra aggressive. Like being aggressive, saying F them picks. We have seen teams in NFL history really, get rewarded for doing just that. And Joe Burrow, I don't want to hear the injuries. I don't want to hear any of that nonsense because you have to take a risk. And when this guy is out here, he can go toe-to-toe with any quarterback in the league. You're playing Josh Allen. Burrow can go toe-to-toe with him. You're going against Stafford. You're going against Mahomes. You're going against any top quarterback in the league. Joe Burrow can be the best player on that field any given Sunday. And this guy is obviously incredibly accomplished. National championship and a Heisman Trophy winner back in 2019. The first overall pick in 2020, made the Pro Bowl in 22 and 24, back-to-back, or 2-time comeback player of the year, made the Super Bowl in his second year in the NFL, really his first year starting the entire season, back-to-back AFC North titles in 21 and 22. He also led the NFL in passing yards and touchdowns in 2024. And I put this tweet out there about a Joe Burrow trade, and everybody was yelling at me saying, Patrick, this is the Herschel Walker trade. You're too young to understand this. Yes, the Herschel Walker trade absolutely set the Vikings franchise back, but this is not Herschel Walker. This is a quarterback. This isn't a running back you're trading for. And yes, even if Joe Burrow, if it doesn't work out and he ends up being, kind of staying on the path of being injury prone, and the Vikings don't end up getting any hardware out of it, I would still appreciate the Vikings franchise taking the risk. So if Joe Burrow is available, I don't care what the asking price is, the Vikings should be putting everything out there on the table. But you guys let me know. Should the Vikings go all in for Joe Burrow? Give me a Y for yes. Give me an N for no. You guys let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. I'm doing it. Absolutely. I mean, why not? It is Joe Burrow at the end of the day. All right, let's talk about the second trade here. We're going to call this the Caleb Downs trade. And this says the Vikings moving up 12 spots to land the 6th overall pick in the 2026 draft. Now, I will say with this trade, the only way the Vikings make this is literally when the Cleveland Browns are on the clock, because you don't make this deal if you don't for sure know Caleb Downs is going to be there at 6. I mean, you never know. I could see a team like the Cardinals, even the Giants at 5, taking Caleb Downs. So the Vikings will attach Jordan Addison, pick 18, move up to number 6, and Jordan Addison, who's obviously one of the better wide receiver 2s in the league. I think he's a top 5 wide receiver 2 in the league. Like, he's in that conversation with like Jameson Williams, T. Higgins, Devontae Adams. Like, he is right there. And Addison is, he's absolutely fantastic. He's a hell of a wide receiver 2. He's got great route running ability, and we've also seen him, get better every single year, even though the drop issue was 100% a concern this past season for Addison. But I still think he's going to be a hell of a wide receiver in the league. And also a team like the Cleveland Browns, they're probably looking at a guy like Addison. Oh, he can come be our wide receiver 1. But the biggest reason why I'd be willing to give up Jordan Addison is because of Caleb Downs. And Caleb Downs, I think, is going to be an all-pro generational player in the National Football League. I think he's the best player in this draft class. So just the value you would get of taking him at 6, I think would be through the roof. I don't want to hear positional value at the safety position. If I told you Kyle Hamilton was in this draft, I think he would be the no doubt number 3 pick in this year's class. And I think Caleb Downs should be the number 3 pick. But if he's there at 6, you go get him. He's an elite tackler, great instincts, culture setter, physical mentality, just an all-around great football player. All right, let's talk about the Jonathan Greenard trade next, because I think if I had to pick one shocking move the Vikings will make this offseason, it would be a Jonathan Greenard trade. And this is no slight at Jonathan Greenard. He is one of my favorite players on this football team. He plays with a high motor. He is fantastic. Even though he hasn't had the sack total this past year, he had 2 years before that, 12.5 sacks each year. Still had a high pressure rate this season. Great against the run, and I think you could somehow land the 33rd overall pick. You may be saying, Patrick, that's a little rich for Jonathan Greenard, an edge rusher. I don't think it is, because if you're a team trading for Jonathan Greenard, you're getting a premier edge rusher in the NFL on a $22 million contract. 2 years, $44 million. A lot of teams would have a lot of interest in that. He is that good of a talent, and that contract is an absolute steal, and you got him under control for 26 and 27. And you're also saying, Patrick, why would you just willingly give up Jonathan Greenard? Because I do think the Vikings need to get younger and more athletic in certain positions. So you take that draft capital, you'd also open up more playing time for this guy right here, Dallas Turner, who had an unbelievable end to his season. 42 pressures. He had 9 sacks in total for this whole year. I mean, probably 7 of those came in the second half of this season. You just see the pop with Dallas Turner, too. 22 years old, typical speed rusher. He really does remind me of like a prime Von Miller when he's playing his best football, just that typical. It's not like he's going to bull rush you like a Jared Verse, but he is just so athletic, and the closing speed is so elite. And he also had 4 forced fumbles. That's a tongue twister right there. But still, unreal stuff from Dallas Turner this past season. I want to see him play a whole lot more. But trading Greenard would definitely hurt. I still, even if you got the 33rd pick, I would still be hesitant to do just that. But you guys let me know. Would you trade Jonathan Greenard? Give me a T for trade and give me a P for pass. I'm coming up here in just a second. I have some ludicrous trades that I know will get you guys riled up down below. But before we do so, I want to tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. And whether you're starting a new routine or making player picks for the first time, trying something new can be hard. But in life and on Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure playoff matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never stops, and Prize Picks lets you take control. Prize Picks has a brand new feature out there called Early Payouts, and if your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. And find your community on Prize Picks with the new social feeds feature. You can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us and tail or fade our picks with just one click. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Massive shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's show. Shout out to Prize Picks. It is good to be right. Oh, this is a fun trade to talk about here. So, the Tua Tagovailoa trade. So, obviously, it's pretty clear that the Dolphins are going to be wanting to move off Tua this offseason, and he has one of the worst contracts in the NFL, and it's damn near impossible to trade. So, a lot of reports out there are suggesting if the Dolphins do trade Tua, you're going to have to attach probably a day 2 pick to move off him. So, in this trade, the Vikings just give up a 7th, just have something in the deal, and they get Tua and a second-round pick. I'm flat out just saying no to this. I do understand the benefit of getting a second-round pick, especially for a team like, all right, yeah, you're getting a starting caliber quarterback plus a second-round pick just to take on a contract. I see that advantage. But his contract, like the Vikings just flat out can't afford it. Even if they decide to cut him, like this year, the dead cap for Tua, if they cut him pre-June 1, would be $99 million. Let's just say they want to make it post-June 1. It would be $67 million and $31 million in 2027, and you're losing $11 million in cap savings, and you'd be losing $42 million in 2026 if you make them pre-June 1. So Tua had a couple people reach out to me. Should the Vikings try to, get involved with this? I would just say no. I don't really believe in him as a quarterback flatly, and if you're also just ride out with J.J. McCarthy if that would ever be presented out there. But here's a trade that's probably going to be talked about a lot once the Niners do get eliminated from the NFL playoffs, and that's the Mac Jones trade to the Minnesota Vikings. And I just think it would cost the Vikes a 2026 second-round pick to land Mac Jones, which is a little rich. If you're asking me, I would maybe, if I'm considering this, like the max I would give up is a third, and I would more likely want to only give a fourth. But Mac Jones just doesn't really move the needle for me, and he shouldn't move the needle for the Vikings because, you just went 9-8 with some awful quarterback play. If you had Mac Jones on the team this season, listen, you would probably win 11 games and be hosting a playoff game right now, but you have no chance of making the Super Bowl. Mac Jones is just limited. I wouldn't go for it. I would just rather ride out with J.J. McCarthy. If J.J. McCarthy ends up not working out, you can go just kind of reset the cycle and go draft a quarterback. But Mac Jones saying no to this. The Vikings are in cap hell. They need to hit on their draft picks, and just giving up a second-round pick for a guy where his ceiling is very limited, I just don't think it makes too much sense for the Minnesota Vikings. But, hey, we appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. If you guys made it to the end of today's show, give me the skull down below in the comments section. Crazy show. Can't wait to go look at the comment section on this one. So we'll get on out of here. As always, Skull Vikes.